Jane thought she needed to keep doing everything until one quiet morning showed her that saying no could protect her future. Golden morning light enters the cottage as Jane sits at the kitchen table, watching several glowing screens filled with reminders, requests, and unfinished commitments. Nothing is exploding, nobody is shouting, and yet the weight of the day already feels heavy. Each message appears small by itself, but together they create the feeling that every minute has already been promised to someone else. Jane steps onto the porch, tightens the strings of her apron, and takes a slow breath in the cool garden air. Dew rests on the herbs beside the path, and for a moment the quiet world feels very different from the crowded schedule waiting indoors. She gathers a few fresh leaves and returns to the wooden counter with a new question in mind. Which commitments truly matter, and which ones are being kept only because she is afraid to disappoint someone? Jane opens her calendar and begins reviewing the week one item at a time. Some responsibilities are essential, others are meaningful but can be moved. Several have remained on the list simply because Jane once said yes without asking whether she had enough time or energy. Instead of trying to squeeze everything into the same day, she begins making deliberate choices. A meeting with no clear purpose is declined. A task that can wait is moved to another day. An obligation that belongs to someone else is returned to the right person. For the first time in weeks, the calendar begins showing empty spaces. At first, those spaces make Jane uncomfortable. She has become so used to measuring a productive day by how crowded it looks that open time feels almost irresponsible. But as she studies the schedule, she realizes that rest, preparation, and attention also require space. A life with no margin leaves no room for unexpected problems, creative thinking, or genuine care. Jane writes several new goals on a clean page. The first is simple: protect time for the responsibilities that matter most. The second is harder: stop accepting every request as though refusal were a failure. The third is to leave enough room in each day to recover, think, and choose the next step carefully. The words are not dramatic, but writing them down feels like making a promise to the person she will become. After the morning work, Jane moves into the kitchen and begins preparing a simple meal. Fresh vegetables are washed, onions are sliced, and fragrant herbs from the garden are stirred into a heavy iron pot. The steady rhythm of cooking gives her mind something peaceful to follow. No screen is demanding an answer. No calendar is asking for another commitment. There is only the sound of the knife, the warmth of the hearth, and the slow simmer of the soup. Jane notices how different this kind of focus feels. She is doing one thing fully instead of carrying 5 unfinished thoughts at the same time. When the stew is ready, she sets the wooden table with care and adds a few wildflowers from the garden. The meal is simple, but the moment feels complete. Each spoonful brings warmth and reminds Jane that a good life is not built only from achievements. It is also built from ordinary moments that are allowed to remain ordinary. After lunch, she washes the ceramic bowls and returns each one to its place. The small kitchen becomes orderly again, reflecting the same clarity she created in her schedule that morning. Later, Jane waters the bonsai tree and removes the faded leaves. She pauses at the sight of the trimmed branches. Growth sometimes requires adding something new, but it can also require removing what no longer supports the whole. The lesson feels familiar now. Boundaries are not walls built against life. They are a way of deciding what receives care. As the afternoon fades, Jane sits on the porch and continues her weaving. The repeated movement of her hands is slow and steady, leaving space for the day's thoughts to settle. She watches the hills darken beneath a pink and orange sky and notices that the pressure she carried in the morning has softened. Nothing outside has magically changed. There will still be requests tomorrow, deadlines next week, and responsibilities that cannot be avoided. What has changed is Jane's decision to meet them with intention instead of automatic agreement. When twilight arrives, she lights a small lantern and closes the wooden shutters. The cottage grows quiet beneath the first stars. Jane looks once more at the page of goals beside the calendar. She understands that protecting the future does not always require a dramatic transformation. Sometimes it begins with a smaller schedule, a clearer priority, an honest no, and enough quiet to hear what truly matters. Jane finally sees that boundaries are not selfish limits, but practical protection for the time, energy, and attention needed to care well for the work, people, and values she truly wants to keep, making each future yes more honest and every no more meaningful. With her boundaries set and her mind lighter, Jane prepares for rest, knowing that tomorrow does not need to be filled completely to be meaningful. Moonlight settles across the garden as the cottage sleeps, holding the promise of a new day built not on constant pressure but on strength, purpose, and carefully chosen commitments.